Well, let's start by saying hello to Andrew Browne. So Andrew Browne has been a co-founder of numerous ventures in professional services and software enterprise. He's also the director of the Calgary Innovation Coalition. He's our head of business development and the funding catalyst lead at Thin Air Labs. He's very passionate about supporting the innovation ecosystem in Alberta and beyond, and has great empathy for founders and for entrepreneurs. And he truly believes, as we all do at Thin Air Labs, that entrepreneurs will change the world for the better, and we're just here to help them do it. So that's one of the reasons we actually designed this funding catalyst service. Andrew Browne is here and will outline in detail how this funding catalyst service works and the value for founders and entrepreneurs. So Andrew, over to you.
Thanks for the intro, Leah, and kind words. So the first thing I wanted to say is the empathy for founders comes from being in a founder position myself. So I've been through this process. I feel the pain of trying to navigate some of the early stages of your venture, especially when you're trying to try to figure out how to get something out the door, how to get something to market. You need a little bit of cash to do that. You're not quite far enough for investors to easily say yes to you, and you're kind of in this predicament. It's quite common. It's something that I've experienced many times. So that's where my empathy for founders comes from, and I think that that's common across the board with Thin Air Labs. I think that's what makes us unique as a team, is that everyone has venture experience in some capacity or another, either founding or being a part of an early stage venture. And Thin Air in a lot of ways ourselves. So we know what it's like to be in your shoes, and we're really passionate about helping you succeed and helping you win. And obviously, as an investor in some of these companies as well, in doing that, we all win. So I just wanted to kind of pretense our conversation here today with that and a little bit about me. So I want to start just by talking a little bit about Thin Air Labs as a whole, and then we'll get a little bit more specific about the Funding Catalyst Impact Service within that context. So Thin Air Labs is a venture capital firm, but operates a little bit differently than a traditional firm would. So we do have a few different arms of our business. We have Thin Air Capital, which is actually our investment arm, and we do have, I think, 19, don't quote me on the number, but I think 19 companies in our portfolio right now, a few of which are actually here on the call joining us today, including Alex from Arbor, who we are invested in as well. And that operates very similarly to what you would expect for another venture capital firm. But we do invest fairly early in the early stages of venture development, so pre-seed or seed stages of high growth potential businesses. We'll talk a little bit about what that means. And I guess the biggest difference between how we work versus other investors is that we de-risk the venture investments that we make by digging in, rolling up our sleeves, and actually co-building and working directly with founders to help them build their business. So other firms might de-risk by increasing the size of their portfolio, taking more bets, making more investments in a broader portfolio. Ours is a little bit more narrow, or actually potentially a lot more narrow, but we also work directly with the founders to help them succeed, and we do that through our design service team. So design services can be a little bit vague, but what we really mean when we say this is everything that a venture needs to succeed, from product strategy, product development and engineering, sales and go-to-market strategy, and everything in between. So all of those kind of blind spots or missing pieces on a founding team that you might not have available to you, we are building the capacity to actually be able to dig in with ventures on that side of things. And then the third thing is just our commitment to community. So we think that a strong and vibrant ecosystem that a founder can be participating in is a big part of the reason why some succeed and some don't. And so operating in a cone of silence or in silo to everything else that's going on, or even in a place where you don't have access to resources or people or networks that you might need to help you navigate some of the challenges you're facing, your chances of success are lesser in that environment. And so our commitment is really to help support the ecosystem here, and in some cases take leadership roles to help fill gaps that exist for entrepreneurs that are operating here. So our belief, as Leah mentioned at the beginning, is that entrepreneurs and founders and these types of ventures that we support have this really unique position where they can actually implement societal change. And in that scenario, the founders and the entrepreneurs that are operating these businesses are actually the heroes of this story. And what we really do is try to focus on helping them be as successful as they possibly can. But it really propagates through everything that we think about when we think about how and who we engage with as founders. And some of the things that we think about are how many humans are going to be impacted if this venture is going to be successful positively. And if that number is really big, chances are the return on the investment that we can make, both in capital and in human resources, is going to be really significant as well. And so that's just a little bit about how we see the world, and also how we engage with ventures. We help build companies, which means actually rolling up our sleeves, getting in the weeds and in the early stages of venture development to help them navigate some of the hardest challenges that they're going to face of just trying to get something out the door, or just trying to prove a product concept, or just trying to validate a specific market segment. That's where we like to play and engage with ventures along the way. We do have a local focus. So we are here in Calgary, based in Calgary and Alberta. We think that there's a ton of opportunity here, especially over the coming years. We're starting to see some of those success stories, some of which are in the companies that we're already invested in as well. So we kind of take this here and then a little bit broader, and then a little bit broader approach to who we engage with. We'd love to be able to work with ventures all across the world. But as our operating team likes to say, we have to stay focused on what we're really good at. And we think that there's a ton of opportunity here that is relatively untapped and just needs a little bit of support to help them succeed. And so that's really where we're focused and where we like to spend our time. Our thesis is pretty simple. We focus on the founder's needs. We support early to reduce risk. And we focus on what is going to make human impact. So what's going to be successful is really based on how many people are going to be affected positively by the success of that venture. A few of those ventures that are local, just wanted to highlight a few of them here. We're also joined, as I mentioned, by Alex from Arbor, CEO and one of the co-founders of their team, to talk a little bit about what that engagement has looked like for them and Thin Air. So Arbor and Thin Air actually engaged on a funding catalyst project a couple weeks ago, maybe just over a month ago. So we're pretty early in that engagement, but we've already been able to successfully help them unlock some wage subsidies for early hires that they're working on. And now we're shifting our focus a little bit on some non-obvious funding programs, we'll call them, that are more specific to the sector they're focused on and the type of venture they're trying to build. Another company that's worth noting here that we're a little bit further down this stage of engagement with is Athenian, who we were successfully able to secure over $200,000, and we're in the process of trying to secure a little bit more than that. I won't be public about that right now, but we'll have more to announce on that afterwards. But this is just to show that we are able to engage in this type of offering. For the really, really early stages, Arbor, who really was pitching for their first round of funding back in the fall, secured it, and we started working with, to a little bit later stage, which is we just closed a Series A round of funding, and we're looking to scale. And all along those stages, the entrepreneurs are going to have different needs, and we are here to serve them through this service offering. So I want to dig in a little bit more about how we engage with ventures and the process that we go through that allows us to be successful in this type of engagement. So when we say funding catalyst, I'll talk about why we use that term versus, let's say, grant writing or something else at the next slide. But I think the key to our success so far with these ventures is that we are design thinkers, and we co-build and co-create with the ventures that we work with. And that means we have to be selective. We have to believe in what the founder is doing. We have to believe in the founding team, and we have to believe in our ability to help them. If one of those things isn't true, then we're not going to have success. And it's, there's probably other resources that are better fit. So we are design thinkers. We lean in, we ask questions with intent. We offer ideas, but we collaborate with founding teams. And really, it's a partnership every step of the way. And that allows us to deeply understand what a venture is trying to do, what the founding team is passionate about, what their vision is, and what they see as success. And then we can work with them backwards from what success looks like to help understand and figure out how we're going to help them get there, how we're going to work together to get there. It's about a lot of different things, but specifically your products, your people, your processes, your vision, and what drives that is really what's important here. And we prefer to execute in lean and agile iterations. And that just means that we're going to learn a lot as we get to know each other. And that means we don't want to overscope anything too early and say, hey, this is what I think we should do for you. because chances are we don't know what that is until we get a little bit more engaged, until we deeply understand what you're trying to do. And that's the only way that we can actually operate as kind of a co-builder or venture builder with a bit of a twist. So I talked about this a little bit, but why Funding Catalyst? So the team, when we were putting this together, went back and forth on a few different names. It definitely wasn't grant writing, although we called it kind of that for a while, because a component of what we do here is actually helping ventures and founders compile the documents that they need to successfully apply for funding. But really what became obvious as we started to engage founders was that there was a whole lot of value that was created just by going through the process of this engagement. And what I mean by that is leaning in and really trying to understand what a founder is trying to do allows us to bring in all of the value that we have on the team to help them navigate some of those early steps. And sometimes that means, you're a little bit early to go after one of these funding programs, but let's help you navigate past that next step so that you are ready for that, and then we can focus on that program. And in some cases, that might mean, it's a part of your overall strategy. So when do you think you're going to raise your next round of funding? Do you have any funding that you've closed to date? How much do you have that you could match other programs with? There's a lot of these questions, and I'm sure, as most of you on the call have experienced, it's a whole lot to juggle in your head when you're trying to run a business. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot going on. I think on my next slide, I point out that there's 1,200 plus programs available for these types of ventures across Canada. So how do you focus your attention on the ones that you're going to be most successful with? And that's really the question that we focus on first. So this whole service line was born out of founder empathy. It was born out of the pain and understanding of what it's like to be in your shoes and try to navigate the early stages of your venture and try to unlock the right funding at the right time to help you execute what's next for your venture. This engagement is so much more than grant writing. What we discovered along the way was that there's a whole lot of business model development and iteration we can go through. There's a lot of product testing and product strategy we can talk about. Of course, there's a lot of documentation that we need to pull in and sometimes create in order to be successful at these applications. But we use that process to really dive deep into these ventures that we're working with and generate a strong understanding of what they're trying to do so that we can be most helpful. And also pull in all of the other resources that Thin Air is surrounded by. So potentially you are a little bit further along and it's time to put you in front of our capital team to pitch for funding. Maybe you're not, but you need a little bit of funding to help you get to that stage, right? So there's all of these different things and different ways we can approach tackling some of the early stage problems that you're probably facing. The best way to do that is to come up with an engagement that actually allows us to lean in and pull in those resources as we go. The other thing is that the outcome of this engagement is focused on bringing in capital to the business to help you navigate. But it's really about finding the right capital at the right time to improve your chances of successful outcomes when you're applying for it. So applying for a program, on average might take you 20 hours worth of work and probably a few headaches and some gray hairs along the way, because there's a lot to navigate. Every portal is a little bit different. Every funding program is going to ask you different questions. When we designed this service, it was about how can we take all of that pain off of the founder's plate and take care of it for them so that they can stay focused on building their business and taking the right necessary steps to do that. What we see a lot, and I've experienced this as a founder myself, is you kind of got your eye on this prize, which is like a big chunk of grant funding or a voucher, let's say, and you change your strategy just to go after that funding. And that might not be what's best for your business. So I think that's a really important thing that we identified along the way, is what would happen is if we took all of that thinking off the founder's plate and let them focus on what was most important to help them navigate the next steps of their business. And what we found was that they actually were able to stay focused on what was most important and didn't have to change their tactics or their strategy just to get a little bit of funding in the door to help them survive the next 3 months. So it really is about, and these numbers are a little bit objective, but 50% strategy, 50% execution. So the strategy is, what are you trying to build? Let's work backwards from there. How much money are you going to need to raise along the way and at what stages? And then how do we actually complement that money that comes in by going after certain programs at certain times to help you leverage that funding to get more, to extend your runway, and to stay focused on what's most important, which is building your business. So just a little bit more about like the tactics of this and what this engagement looks like and kind of feels like. So the first thing that we do, as I've already talked about a little bit, is lean in really hard on these ventures. We spend a lot of time at the beginning of this engagement just to get to know the business, to gather documents, but basically to use the process of putting together, let's say, a data room for these types of applications, to get to know the business and to dive deep with them so that we understand what you're trying to do, what stage you're at, who you need to hire to get to the next stage, how much money you might need to bring in. All of those things we need to factor in. So the first thing that we do is really a discovery session. Over the course of, let's say, 2 weeks, we'll take a bunch of time to get to know the venture and to lean in on this. And also get organized, pull in all of the documents that we know we're going to need to apply for programs together, and make sure that they're all in one place and easy to access so that we're never fumbling over, oh, wait, we don't have that document that's required for this. Now the deadline's at 2:00 today. We want to make sure that we have everything that we need in one place so that we're ready to go when the program's available. The next step is grant, voucher, wage subsidy program discovery. So as I mentioned, there's more than 1,200 programs available. They're always changing. Different buckets of funding fill up. Some of them are depleted. We try to keep a pulse on everything that's going on so that we know which one to focus on when to be as successful as possible. And what that typically looks like is, here's 1,200 programs. Let's try to find the 3 to 5 that are you're going to have the best chance of success, and focus our attention there so that we can actually align our interests and align how we do that together. The next step is really about crafting and drafting your narrative. So this is how you tell your story. Do you have decks that are going to present this properly? Are they dated? Chances are they probably are. Do you have a business plan that you've put together for a bank or another funding program? Chances are you do, but it's also dated. So it's really about like pulling in what's true today and what's true for the next 3 months for you, so that we can tell the story appropriately and emphasize the right things to the founders or to the funders, so that they're hearing the right things and it's aligned with what they're looking for opportunities to fund. And then the last step is really just supporting the application process. And so this is sometimes like asking questions that some founders don't know how to ask, making sure that we're keeping track of deadlines to make sure that we're not late for anything. Taking a lot of this stuff that often happens on the side of a founder's desk off their plate so that we can just get it done without them thinking about it. That's really what that comes down to, and that's how we operate in this scenario. So I just want to summarize really quick, and then we'll pause. Love to bring Alex up here, or unmute, I guess. Still getting used to the whole virtual thing, to talk a little bit about that experience, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. But I did want to get a little bit more specific about what this engagement looks like. In order to do everything that we're talking about doing and lean in, and for our team who's represented here today to be able to pull in the resources from thin air that we need to be as impactful as possible for ventures that we're working with, it is a fee for service that we offer here. So typically the goal for that and how we structure the pricing model is to align our interests with the venture's interests so that we're all winning together. So there is a fee up front that we charge to jump in and get started. And in some scenarios, we might look at certain programs that allow for it and say, let's look at a contingency on certain programs. But typically, we're not as interested in the upside there. We want to be able to be as helpful and impactful as possible, and that's why we do charge up front for that. But it's a fairly minimal fee, and typically we're charging between $5,000 to $10,000 to get started, to jump in. And the outcome that we're trying to drive with that engagement is to recoup that cost very quickly and move on to, and typically most programs are going to bring in much more funding, like 10 times as much funding as that. But we also don't tie ourselves to, we're going to do 3 programs or we're going to do 3 applications. It is much more about, here's the outcome that we talk about together and we discuss together. And let's focus on that outcome and let's get that done for you. And we don't measure our time in hours. We don't get too specific about how much time we're spending on one thing or another. We're really focused on the outcome that we're trying to drive. And then our incentive is to be as efficient as possible while we do that, but also to help you, the founders, win. So I think I'll stop there. I'll take a pause. I got this nice finishing slide here to end on. Leah, let me know if you want me to stop sharing and if you want to bring Alex up to chat a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that, Andrew. That was a really terrific presentation. It outlined so nicely how it's really about getting to know the ventures that we're working with and figuring out what they need and where they want to go and how we can support you in doing that. And, that's really the big mission at Thin Air Labs, and it's certainly the mission of our impact services. It's one of the reasons why we call them impact services. So thank you so much for that. I hope Alex is here. Alex, if you can unmute yourself and say hello.
What's up, guys? I'm here.
There he is. Hey, Alex. Thanks so much for joining us today and for telling us a little bit about your story. I'm actually going to read a little intro for Alex. So Alex is the CEO of Arbor, and Arbor is a software platform that makes shopping sustainably as simple as possible. As the tech CEO with expertise in both software and business development, Alex is able to understand and build the ins and outs of software products while also being the guy you can depend on to secure capital. So Arbor helps people choose the values most important to them, like the environment or human rights, diversity, and so on. And then shoppers can buy from companies that align with their values. It is a very cool platform. And welcome, Alex. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. It's weird to me having someone hype me up like that, so appreciate it.
This is so great. So I just told everybody a little bit about Arbor, but why don't you sort of take us in a little bit deeper with what Arbor is and what the outcomes that you're driving for and the impact that you're driving for?
Yeah, so like you said, Arbor is basically a platform that helps consumers shop as sustainably as possible and make it super easy to do so. The main things that we identified is that it all comes down to information, convenience, and price. And these are the main things that we're trying to hit to make sustainability itself sustainable. It's not just like like my heart's in it, but my business model doesn't work kind of thing. It's like how are we actually going to make incremental changes in people's habits and make it seem like they don't even know they're being sustainable, but they are kind of thing.
Yeah, no kidding. Why did you actually want to build this company, Alex? What was driving this mission?
So originally, my co-founders and I were working on a software development company. So it was a firm that were building projects and stuff. And then COVID hit and all of our projects got canceled. So we've always, our original company was going to be like an idea factory for us on the side to come up with. We always wanted to build things out ourselves. And then we always had this idea of how can we impact people around the world with software? We knew it's very easy, everyone's connected. And then we found these different sustainability data sets and stuff like that. So during March, we entered a bunch of hackathons. There was primarily one called the Microsoft Hackathon. It was Canada-wide. We ended up winning with our solution. And it was around July, we were I think we have something on our hands. Let's really dive deep into this. It definitely, as pandemic went on and as people's, the market trends went on, the market right now is telling us this is the best possible time to do something like this because it's just everyone really is caring more and more about where their money is going.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you were getting your company off the ground and you realized you might want just a little bit of help. And so you engaged with us at Thin Air Labs. And I think Andrew mentioned this, that your engagement with Thin Air Labs is fairly early stages when it comes specifically to the funding catalyst service, but it's already been quite impactful. Tell us a little bit about that, Alex.
Yeah. So we've already gotten 3 interns hired through the funding catalyst, which is amazing because that's just as a startup, you only have a finite amount of resources, right? So we raised $800,000. We're hoping that we're making that last for the next 12 months. We're making sure that we get value out of every penny. Getting subsidized hirings, and these interns are very, very smart. So they're a huge value add to our company, and just having them subsidized is just kind of too good to be true kind of thing.
No kidding. Andrew, do you want to weigh in a little bit on that in terms of what you did with Alex and in getting these interns in place?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts with that leaning in that I talked about, right? So developing a deep understanding of, okay, where's Arbor at as a business, and what are the next steps you have to take to try to get to your next milestone? And immediately it was obvious that Alex says, we need to hire more people. We need to bring on really smart interns, and we need them to be focused in these areas. And so these are specific skill sets that we actually need to to hire into. And so the first thing we did, and it was really about hitting the ground running as soon as we knew enough to be useful, we just started gathering all the information that we needed, gathering all the documents that we needed, and then basically submitting applications kind of in tandem with Alex, without him having to think too much, and him and the founding team having to think too much about it. And so we had a couple of laughs along the way, because it was like, hey, looks like we've been approved for a couple of these. Are you ready? And do you need access to a pool of people that you could hire for these roles now that we've secured some funding for it? And then that was actually a big part of these particular hires as well, was finding people with the right skill sets. And so there's a bunch of different internship programs out there. Some of them specialize in kind of marketing, storytelling, digital media. Some of them specialize in software development. Some of them specialize in data. So we kind of did a full landscape assessment of what was out there, and then just played matchmaker to figure out which ones were the best fit for Arbor. And so that was where we started, because it was kind of the immediate need. And now we're obviously still engaged and turning our attention a little bit more to some, I guess, voucher or kind of project-based funding programs that we're going to carve out, a chunk of development, a product roadmap work that the team at Arbor is doing, and try to source some funding for some of that work as well. And Arbor is unique in a lot of ways, like obviously early stage, but has kind of a very specific sector focus, but not to like a specific part of the sector, right? Like it's based on consumer behavior. It's based on data collection of buying behavior around sustainability. So it's really about like, what's unique about this, and how can we tell the story to the right funding program to get them interested in what they're working on. And so that's kind of the stage that we're at now with the team at Arbor.
Yeah, and to credit Andrew, he found, there was some environmental subsidies and stuff like that to hire people. So we were able to take what we're doing, take the data, kind of transform the story behind to be applicable to this environmental subsidy. And I wouldn't have thought of that.
No kidding. Alex, tell us a little bit more about what it was actually like to work with Andrew and connecting with him on a regular basis. What did that look like, and how did you feel about it?
I've known Andrew for a while now, so it was pretty easy, honestly. But just working with him on a regular basis is it's simple because of the fact that he understands. So if I have to explain what are our, when you're going to an investor and a very early kind of conversations, you don't want to be like, okay, we're going to do this and this and this and this and this, and they're going to be like, that's too much stuff. Clearly you're unfocused, right? When you talk to another founder, it's they understand what's your main focus, but then there's all these other things that you could potentially tap into and explore. And I think that's really easy with Andrew, because he just gets that ideology where it's yeah, if there's money on the table, there's an opportunity. It's a byproduct of what you're doing. Why wouldn't you go after it? Why wouldn't you explore it? And these grants and these programs really help to enable that as exploratory services.
That's exciting. So Alex, if you could sort of sum it up, what has this service meant for Arbor and your company?
So it saved a lot of time.
Yeah.
When we started, I remember looking at everyone's always talking about grants and grants this, grants that. And I was like, yeah, I'll take free money. That's awesome. But then you look at what it takes to get those grants and what it takes the application wise, and it's time that I don't want to be able to have to commit. You are doing so many other things, filling out a application after application is just really hard. And as a startup, if you have a good idea, if you have a good team, whatever it is, your constraint isn't really capital, it's time. Time is the most finite thing you have, and you have to be most impactful in it in that length of time as possible. And so anything I can't imagine also doing all the grant applications, all the other things, while doing all the things that I have to do on product development and marketing and all this stuff like that. It would take twice as long.
No kidding. How did you feel in terms of just emotionally, how you were feeling, your stress levels, anxiety levels? We know that it can be a stressful and anxiety-ridden time to build a startup.
Yeah, it is it can be stressful. I think I'm in a unique case where it's some people have asked me how do you sleep, or how do you are you worried about failing and all this stuff like that. I'm failure is just part of it. It's you're basically, you have a bunch of hypotheses and a bunch of ideas, and inevitably or there could be a case that you fail, right? And it is what it is. It's how you define failure. Letting that kind of like have you petrified and like afraid of taking risks is like the wrong way to do it. So stress wise though, like it's more so that it's really just a time piece that makes it a lot less stressful. So like if I can just defer and know, and I have the peace of mind that like someone else is taking care of this, and like don't get me wrong, like would you rather give up 10% of your company for $1 million, or would you rather pay like $5,000 for someone to get you a bunch of like no strings attached funding, right? Like I'd much rather do that. So like even like the fees that Andrew was talking about, like it's a very easy calculation in my mind. And like I think kind of like part of the reason why I'm here is like I'm not a person to really just like BS people and like not give them my genuine answer and opinion. Like if I thought that this was something that was like, was not inclined to what an entrepreneur wants to do or wants to see out of a program, I wouldn't be here. But like 100% guarantee this is totally worth it. There
you go. Thank you for that, Alex. That's terrific. I was going to ask you, what would you say to other entrepreneurs about the Funding Catalyst service? But I think you kind of nailed it right there.
I think it's just honestly like just do the math yourself. Like, you can either go raise the money, you can either go do the applications yourself and spend a bunch of time, or you can just pay a fee and have someone else take care of it. And then it's just one less thing you have to worry about.
There you go. Andrew, do you have anything else you wanted to weigh in on that in terms of your engagement with Arbor and Alex?
Not particularly. It's like one of the reasons that I think that this is a lot of fun for us is because it allows us to lean in with people building amazing things, right? And I'm joined today with the most recent additions to our team, Dr. Katie Green and Ben Hilborn, who are on the call as well. So be sure to reach out to them. But I think that when I think about building, this line of the business out, it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be high adrenaline. There's going to be deadlines that we have to hit. There's going to be all sorts of things. Ben can attest on that, some of that stuff today. But I think what keeps us going on all of it is just being able to work with amazing entrepreneurs, solving big problems. And I think that that's really what's motivating to us here. And then having, the empathy in mind of what it's like to be a founder trying to build something really, really big. And it's hard, but it can be a lot of fun if you can, as Alex said, approach it the right way and kind of, have the right viewpoint of what you're trying to do. Because again, I've been in those shoes. The only thing I would add is, Alex, thank you for all those great comments. I'll get you back after the show. Don't worry about that.
Just bring pizza to the office, Andrew.
All good. So yeah, so that's it wasn't a paid sponsorship, I promise, but it was no, it's just a lot of fun to do this type of work. And I mean, if you can kind of gamify it a little bit and think about it strategically, it's actually funny enough challenging in a lot of ways to try to figure out how to navigate this and what the right narrative is and what the right program to go after when is. And as odd as this sounds, as deep as I've been on some of this stuff, it's I'm finding it fun to help entrepreneurs navigate this stuff. And so I hope that's true for the team as we continue to grow. But we're definitely looking for more ventures to work with on this stuff. So I would love to connect with anyone on the call that thinks that we can be helpful for them in their venture.
There you go. We do have a couple of questions in the chat already. So why don't we transition right away to the Q&A? And I think this one we'll start with you, Alex. This one looks like, what program are the Arbor interns funded by?
That's a question best directed to either Andrew or my co-founder who has been working with Andrew. Like I'm part of the combos, but like I don't remember what the programs are, to be honest.
That's okay. Maybe Andrew can get you back there.
Yeah, and so one of Alex's co-founders, Abdullah, has been I've been working closely with on this stuff too. I think we have two funded through the ADAPT program, which is a program that's based out of Ryerson that's partnered with SAIT here. And so they have a really unique program where they actually do a 6-week training program that's that we can actually contribute to what the training is after they graduate. And so it's for recent grads and students in kind of digital skills roles. And so I think that there's a graphic design role and then also junior developer. And then we also are finalizing right now applications for Eco Canada, which is an environmental focused program, not just for interns, but also we're looking at a bunch of other roles as well, data analyst roles and other stuff that's related to sustainability.
Terrific. Thanks for that, Andrew. Cameron, I hope you got your question answered there. We've got a question here from Brent. He says, curious for Alex or Andrew, did the company already have someone with HR expertise, or was this a skill provided by thin air? A concern when bringing on additional resources, having basic HR documents, policies, and so on. You're nodding your head, Andrew.
I can take it from our perspective. Like, we didn't have really an HR person. We've kind of just been like figuring it out as it goes, and we had all our like documentations, all stuff like that. Obviously, like legal documentations for contracts and stuff like that created. But it was more so like we interviewed the entire process was like we got the let's say like the funding secured. We would interview internally the right person, the right candidates for it. We'd give them the contract. Once they're on the contract, all our internals are kind of set up where it's like everything's automated. So like payroll stuff and all that.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is anytime that there's, let's say, gaps in skills that are going to allow for, hiring is pretty specific, right? You got to bring on people. There's got to be some kind of back end support on bringing those people on. But anything that we're creating to apply or to execute on that application work, we're also like it's the ventures, right? And so we're doing it kind of with intent and purpose around like what else will this be helpful for in the future. And so a really good example of that with Arbor is we had to create some kind of inclusiveness documentation about like their basically like what their culture is as a business, and like what does that translate to for interns? How do you advertise this to the right people to attract the right people?
Yeah.
And we created some documents that is going to be helpful for other programs that we're going to apply for. A different one that we're working on with another venture is and we've done this a few times now, is like creating a business plan. So this is a really common one for ventures because as founders know of these types of businesses, you don't create business plans, you create business models, and you create pitch decks and stuff like that. And that's typically how you communicate what you're trying to do. And a business plan, as we used to say in some of the programming that I created for Startup Calgary, is typically a big long document that no one reads anything except for the executive summary. And the other thing is that it's outdated as soon as you write it, right? So it's kind of a pain to try to maintain that. And so what we do is we actually use all of the material that we capture and organize for these ventures. We piece it together to make it into a really nice looking, but fairly concise business plan that we can then keep up to date, but it's at the ready anytime we have to apply for other programs. And so we always think about when we're creating content, when we're creating narratives, when we're creating documents, we're thinking about how else can this be useful for this venture, not just for this application, but also for promotional material, all of that sort of stuff too. And so it's just always something that we kind of keep in the back of our heads. Probably because we've been in that process or that situation where we put together this big long document and then you print it and then you apply and hopefully you're successful. But even if you're not, or even if you are, it's this document that you never look at ever again. So it's really about how do you not duplicate efforts? How do you, everything has intent with what you're developing or creating.
Yeah. That founder empathy is very useful. It gives us a lot of ways that we can help our ventures without it actually being directly related to one certain thing. No question. I just want to call out in the chat here too, that once we wrap this up, if you have any questions, we do have 3 funding catalyst leads on this team. Andrew, of course, at thinairlabs.ca, Ben at thinairlabs.ca, and Katie at thinairlabs.ca. We're so excited to welcome Ben and Katie to our team. They're new additions, so they've got lots of time and energy, and I'll be very happy to help you along on your journey. A couple more questions in the chat here from Quentin. Once you begin engagement, is it similar to an incubator where the ventures interact and can leverage each other? Good question. Andrew.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure.
I was reading it at the same time.
Once you begin engagement, is it similar to an incubator where the ventures interact and can leverage each other?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think obviously a pandemic has been challenging with this, right? Like we have an office that we recently completed some renos on, and we're just super keen to invite a bunch of ventures that we're working with to work out of that space with us and to kind of create that sense of community as well, even more so than we do right now. But it is something that we're definitely thinking about. It's a little bit more challenging now because everything's virtual. But I wouldn't say it's like an incubator. Like it's not like a program specific engagement where it's like, okay, every week we're going to meet at this time and we're going to go through these curriculum lessons or whatever. It's a little bit more ad hoc's not the right word either, because there's structure behind it, but it's more specific and bespoke to each venture that we engage with. But one of the things about engaging with Thin Air is because we're trying to impact so many ventures across a broad range of different sectors, those kind of network connections come organically. So oftentimes we'll be working with one venture and then we'll be working with another. And of course, we're sensitive to privacy issues and IP issues. But oftentimes there's just like really obvious connections that we can make that's a lot less obvious if you don't have that conduit to it. And I mean, that was something that this is much more like beyond impact this service line. Sorry, Funding Catalyst. This is just the way that we kind of operate as a builder, where we truly believe in, like we say community on the front slide and stuff like that. We're not just saying that, like we truly believe that type of connection is really, really important for the success of ventures. And so when you're engaging with Thin Air, you're really engaging with our entire community and our entire network of also other founders, but also potentially other investors and other community partners that we work with on some of these initiatives.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons you will see moving forward. We'll be talking about ourselves as an ecosystem studio because we fundamentally believe in supporting the ecosystem and the innovation ecosystem, which means supporting all of the ventures together to create this innovation ecosystem that will continually give that feedback to the ventures and the community and where they're operating. So definitely like hooking up ventures with each other. Another question from Savannah in the chat. Do you have a specific timeline or duration for your work with ventures? Great question.
Yeah, it is a great question. So we standardize it to some degree, but the reality is every program's different. Every venture has different timelines of their own. So it's really actually more bespoke to the needs of the venture. In general, it's typically like a 3-month engagement. But I wouldn't even say from start to finish. It's much more outcome driven. And so what we're really trying to do is in the early stages of this engagement, when we're pulling up our sleeves and really leaning into the venture that we're working with, it's really about, what does success look like to you? And then there's often a bunch of programs that are like, of course, don't align timeline wise with like April 1st or whatever, right? So I wouldn't say it's specific. It depends on each venture, but what we try to do is align our outcomes that we're trying to achieve together with each other so that we can get some clarity around that, but typically at the beginning of the engagement. So yeah, I mean, typically like a proposal from us looks something like, it's going to be maybe an 8 to 12 week kind of engagement, roughly like this. But obviously, as we learn more and as we take an agile approach to this, and as we learn what programs are going to be really impactful for you, we will point them out every step of the way. This will be stuff that we just put in front of you. And does this feel right? Is this the right type of program you're after? Okay, it is. It sounds good, but it looks like they're going to get a renewal of funding in 2 months from now. No problem, but we're going to keep our eye on that. And we'll come back to it. And so it really is a little bit more agile than just saying like, no, it's going to be between this date and this date. It's specific to each venture, and it really depends on the needs of the venture.
Perfect. Thanks, Andrew. Here's another question from Anka. Do you outsource operations, IT, HR, supply chain, etc.?
Sorry, I'm also trying to read at the same time. I'm going to stop doing that. Can you repeat that again, Leo? Sorry.
Yeah, you bet. Do you outsource operations, IT, HR, supply chain, etc.?
I'm just a little bit, I'm not sure about the question. So we don't outsource this work. Like this is all internal to the Thin Air team. This is core to our impact service team, as is a number of other folks that we have on the team too that are specific to product strategy, sales and marketing strategy, all of those sort of things too. That's all core to Thin Air. In some cases, we do have some contractors that we work with on specific projects that help us navigate certain things that we don't have core competency on. It's venture building is not standard. So every engagement is kind of unique and requires different things. And so as we see trends and patterns, we can identify those and say, okay, that's something that we should hire in and needs to be core to our team. But in some cases, we will more likely to partner with someone or to help you source someone else, maybe that's completely unrelated to Thin Air, to help you achieve what you're trying to do. We are driven much more by like founders' needs. than anything else. And so sometimes that means we're not the right fit to engage with at this time. What I will say is that we'll take a first call with any venture and try to be as helpful as we possibly can. And if that requires another follow-up afterwards, then that's what it takes. And sometimes it's really obvious that, oh, you're at this stage. And actually, I think what's going to be most impactful for you right now is if we connect you with a partner in the community or potentially another investor that is more specific to that sector that you're in, whatever the case might be, right? I'm not sure if that answers your question specifically. Most things are core competencies to our team. Some things are sourced. But yeah, in terms of other types of service offerings, let's say accounting, HR services, that's not something that we have core to our team, but it's certainly something that we are aware of, and we can help source some partners that can help you out with it.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, like it really, if you want to get the most out of this, like you need to understand as a venture, like, are you ready to do this? And also like specifically, like the more specific you can be on how you guys can engage, the better. Because then you can have understandings like, okay, do I need to hire or do I need to have like a project fund or something, or like whatever it is, right? The more specific you are, the more effective Andrew will be. If you come not really understanding, you just attracted to like the sense of, getting free money or whatever, like if that's not really it's not gonna help you further your goals.
Good point. Good point.
And just I got a private question, and I've been trying to read it a couple times, and that's why I'm going to distract it. But I think it's an important one. I think it's worth talking about. So the question was a little bit specific about the signals of and risk potentially of engaging with startups on like a service offering like this, that's a fee for service, versus an engagement that's going to lead to an investment from our fund. And I think it's a really important question to talk about because, of course, it's not cut and dry, it's not black and white, but we try to make it very specific with and explicit with what we are engaging with and when. And the best way I can answer this is that when you engage with, there's an analogy I can use too, and I'll come back to that. But when you engage with thin air, there's potentially many things that we can help you with. One of those things could be capital and investment. One of those things could be funding through grants and other service and other programs. One of those things could be product strategy. One of those things could be engineering. Like there's a array of different things that we can support ventures with. We are committed to being very direct and specific with what you're looking for and asking for, and how we are going to interact with you as a result of that. And so it's not uncommon that companies come to us and say, hey, I'm looking for investment, but I could also use a lot of help with product strategy. And we say, no problem, that's two separate tracks. Here's the track on the investment side, and here's our capital team that you can engage with on that. And we try to keep that at the very least arm's length, but separate from the conversation around how can we help you with product strategy. But of course, it is something that we have to consider all of. Maybe you're not quite ready for investment because you need some help on product strategy. And so it is something that we are very conscious of the fact that we don't want to confuse anyone, and we don't want to lead anyone on into a direction that is not right for the venture and confusing and could cause some harm. We try to have those conversations really early in the process so that people understand that these things are related but not directly correlated. So just because you receive investment from thin air does not mean that we expect you to spend money with us on the impact service side. And just because you receive impact services does not mean that it's going to guarantee an investment on the other side.
I'll say like there was literally zero pressure on us to like accept that offer. We just did it because it made sense. Like that was basically.
Yeah, and I think it's an important question to ask and to just be clear on, because from the outside it can be like, okay, well, they're an investment team, but they're also venture building and they're also doing all these things. It's a unique business model, and so we are, and Lee has done a great job of just like trying to help us capture the language that makes that very simple and easy to understand. But a really valid question that I just wanted to make sure we had a chance to cover.
That's great. That's terrific. We're almost coming up to time. So maybe I will just start to wrap this up. Is there anything else, Andrew or Alex, that you wanted to get out there before I just wrap this baby up?
I'm good. Unless you guys need to know anything more.
No, the only thing I would say, I think that there's some potential call to action that we can provide on the other side of this, or where to go to learn more. Again, what I mentioned a little bit earlier is that we're happy to take an initial call from any venture that's working on interesting ideas. not super subjective about what that interesting idea is. I'm just drawn to interesting people working on cool things. And so please reach out if there's anything that you think we can help you with, whether it's an engagement on Funding Catalyst or just like I need someone to talk to about this challenge that I'm facing right now. What we're really trying to do at Thin Air is be a conduit to some of that information that might be a lot easier to find in more connected or vibrant ecosystems in other places. Calgary's got a lot coming down the pipe here and a lot of growth in front of us. But it also means right now, some of those questions aren't easy to answer for yourself, and so we want to help you find the right person to help you address them. So feel free to reach out. There's certainly going to be opportunities beyond just this Funding Catalyst that we're going to be able to engage you on. So don't be shy about that. And then the last thing I would say is I think just in terms of what you can expect. So if you are interested in learning more about this in particular. I think that we're going to send out a package afterwards with, I believe, this deck and also a link to a form that you can fill out. Just gives us a little bit of information and context so that we can be efficient with the first call. We'll get back to you within 24 hours of receiving a reply on that. And the first step will be setting up a discovery call. So typically 45 to 60 minutes to learn a little bit more about what you're up to and how we can be most helpful.
Yeah, and just to quickly add on to that, I did think of something, sorry. When it comes to Thin Air, like I've, been in the ecosystem for probably 3 or 4 years now. I've talked to a lot of people and people tend to give advice, but not tell you when they don't know what the answer is. And so I honestly with working with Thin Air, I just have full confidence that it'll be either advice that makes sense and it actually is applicable, or if they're I don't know, we'll connect you with someone that does though. And that's really important because when you're giving advice to startups, depending on how new you are, whatever is the ecosystem, one piece of advice could destroy your business. So you really have to feel very confident in what advice you're getting. And so I feel just full confidence with Thin Air as the place to be for startups to work with in Calgary.
Well, that sounds pretty great. Thank you so much for saying that, Alex. That sounds like a pretty good place to wrap things up. Thank you both to Andrew and Alex for your time today and for sharing all of this information on the Funding Catalyst Impact Service. Certainly watch out for a follow-up email from us. We will have a package with this deck, as Andrew mentioned, and a form that you can fill out if you are more curious about this service and any other services that we offer. And even if it's just curiosity about Thin Air Labs and building what's next, we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to connect with you. So thank you so much for being here, everybody. Stay tuned for more information from us and let's go build what's next. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.